Emmanuel Adat Tunbo has always harbored dreams that stretch far beyond the borders of Lagos, Nigeria, his hometown where he was born and raised. At 30, he is an ambitious entrepreneur who has built a logistics business from scratch. His enthusiasm and determination have earned him the respect of his peers, but there is one thing that, despite his success, he has never been able to achieve: love. In an age where social media and dating apps have made finding a partner more straightforward than ever, Emmanuel finds the path challenging. Every night, he scrolls through countless profiles, swiping left and right, hoping to find someone who shares his values and ambitions. His family often criticizes him for his reliance on the virtual world to find love. But Emmanuel remains steadfast. Then, one fateful night, a profile caught his eye while scrolling through the social media platform: Sophia Adabo. A bright smile, a piercing gaze, an irresistible charm. Sophia introduced herself as a 27-year-old fashion designer based in Accra, Ghana. Her bio was simple but captivating: dreamer, creator, sunset lover. Curiosity piqued. Emmanuel couldn't resist sending the first message. "Hi, Sophia. Your design work sounds exciting. I'd love to know more about it if you don't mind." He didn't expect the response to come within minutes. The conversation started like any other casual conversation about fashion and travel, but soon it became an hour-long conversation. Sincere, thoughtful. Sophia had a way of speaking that made Emmanuel feel heard and understood. She tells the story of her complete challenge to assert her actions in the competitive fashion industry and her dream of opening her store in Accra. Their conversation did not stop at hobbies or work as the days passed. They shared dreams, everyday stories, and even their deepest secrets. Sophia's charm came not only from her appearance or talent, but also from her soul. Emmanuel gradually realized that that girl was conquering his heart. "You are a kind soul, Emmanuel," Sophia once said in a midnight video call. "In today's world, finding someone as sincere as you is rare." But despite their growing feelings, there were still things that troubled Emmanuel. Sophia had almost no social media traces and was lonely when it came to sharing her personal life. Every time he tried to ask more, she skillfully redirected the conversation. His heart told him to trust, but his mind was filled with questions. His doubts only grew when a thought crossed his mind: why not meet her in person? One evening, as they were talking about the future, Emmanuel blurted out, "What if I came to Accra to see you? I want to meet you in person, Sophia." A pause that lasted a few seconds. Sophia's voice softened as if she were weighing each word. "I'd love to, Emmanuel. But are you sure you want to go through all this trouble for me?" Emmanuel laughed without hesitation. "What trouble? You're worth every mile I've put you through." And so, the plan was made. A meeting was about to happen. A moment of clarity that could change everything or open a new chapter in their lives. Emmanuel began saving for the trip, eager to turn his virtual relationship into a real-life romance. His friends were skeptical, warning him of the risks of online relationships. But Emmanuel brushed aside his worries, convinced that Sophia was honest. Little did he know that the journey he was about to embark on would lead to a road of no return. The hope that digital connection had ignited in him was about to evaporate, giving way to a cold nightmare. A man of action, Emmanuel did not turn back once he had made up his mind. The thought of holding Sophia's hand and looking into her eyes filled him with excitement. He began planning the trip meticulously, leaving no detail to fate. The first step was securing the paperwork. Emmanuel quickly renewed his passport, applied for a visa to Ghana, and carefully researched the best route. He took a direct flight to Accra, ensuring he arrived refreshed and ready for the moment he had dreamed of for months. Sophia, meanwhile, was equally eager. Their daily conversations were now filled with plans for his visit. She talked about the places they would explore together, from the bustling Makola market to the tranquil Labadi beach to her favorite coffee shop in Accra. Sophia even offered to book a hotel room for Emmanuel. "Don't worry," she assured him gently during a phone call. "I'll make sure everything is perfect. I want this trip to be unforgettable for both of us." Her enthusiasm put Emmanuel at ease, dispelling the lingering doubts that had been lingering in his mind. But his friends weren't so quickly convinced. "You're going to fly to another country just to meet someone you've never met in person?" a close friend asked in disbelief. "What if she's not who she says she is?" Emmanuel laughed, shaking his head at their exaggerated concern. "Not everyone online is a scammer. Sophia is different. We've been talking for months, even on video calls. She's real." Despite repeated warnings, he was undaunted. Emmanuel wanted this trip to be perfect, so he took the time to prepare carefully. He bought Sophia a gift, a pair of gold earrings, a bottle of her favorite perfume, and a few special items he knew would make her smile. But as the day of departure approached, things started to get strange. Sophia's behavior suddenly changed. She began avoiding video calls, becoming vague about details like her home address or work location. Whenever Emmanuel asked, she would only give ambiguous answers. And then, when he asked about the meeting place after he arrived in Ghana, Sophia's answer confused him even more. "Don't worry, I'll send a driver to pick you up at the airport." A feeling of unease began to creep into Emmanuel's mind, but by now he had gone too far to turn back. A small voice in Emmanuel's head warned him that something was wrong, but he pushed it aside. Excitement overrode everything. "She's just nervous," he told himself. "Meeting in person is a big step for both of us." The night before his departure, Emmanuel packed his bags carefully. He double-checked his papers, gifts, and itinerary. Everything was perfect. His family saw him off in silence, their eyes worried but supportive. "Be careful, son," his mother said, her voice tinged with worry. "Not everyone has good intentions." Emmanuel squeezed her hand, smiling reassuringly. "I promise to be careful, Mom. I'll be fine." As the flight took off, he was filled with mixed emotions. Excitement and anxiety battled inside him. The hours on the plane passed slowly, his mind filled with images of the last time he would see Sophia, her eyes, smile, welcoming arms. As the plane's wheels touched down in Accra, his heart pounded. Taking a deep breath, Emmanuel stepped off the plane, feeling the humid Ghanaian air fill his chest. He smiled. "This is the beginning of a new chapter in my life." But then, as he entered the arrivals hall, his joy gave way to a strange feeling. He scanned the crowd for Sophia, hoping for a familiar face. Instead, a man holding a sign with his name on it approached. "Welcome to Ghana, Mr. Adat Tunbo." The man smiled brightly. "Sophia told me to come pick you up." Emmanuel paused, his heart beating faster. "She's not coming?" He tried to ignore the unease in his heart. "She must be busy," he assured himself. "I'll see her soon." The man introduced himself as Kwame, a friend of Sophia's family. His smile was strangely wide, too friendly, too polite, and something about the way he spoke made it impossible for Emmanuel to be completely comfortable, like everything had been rehearsed. "Don't worry, Mr. Adat Tunbo," Kwame said as he helped load Emmanuel's luggage into the trunk of a dusty silver car. "Sophia's waiting for you." The car rolled through the bustling streets of Accra. Everything was so new. The colorful markets, the pulsing music from the street stalls, the warm tropical air that enveloped him. But no matter how vivid the scenery was, Emmanuel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He looked at Kwame, his voice doubtful. "Where's Sophia?" Kwame was silent for a second, as if considering his answer. Then he said slowly, "She's preparing dinner for you, at her house. You'll see her soon." The answer sounded reasonable, but there was something in Kwame's tone that made Emmanuel shiver. A subtle evasion, a lie wrapped in sincerity. And then Emmanuel began to realize he had gone too far to turn back. Emmanuel decided not to ask any more questions. He reminded himself to be patient. After all, this was his first time meeting Sophia, and she had gone out of her way to make him feel welcome. Or at least, he believed she had. After nearly an hour of navigating unfamiliar streets, the car finally pulled up in front of a modest 2-story house tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Not a single light came from the windows, no sign of life. The silence that surrounded them made Emmanuel shiver involuntarily. "Here we are," Kwame announced, stepping out of the car. Emmanuel took a deep breath, trying to shake off his unease. Just nervousness, nothing more. But his heart was still pounding as he approached the front door. Kwame unlocked the door, looking at him with an unreadable smile. "Sophia's inside." Emmanuel stepped through the doorway, a blast of musty air hitting his face. The lighting inside was dim, the living room bare of old mismatched chairs. A single flickering bulb cast a dim glow, drawing long shadows on the walls. "Sophia?" he called out, his voice echoing in the space. There was no response. "She'll be here soon," Kwame said, then closed the door with a resounding bang. The sound made Emmanuel freeze. A shiver ran down his spine. Something was wrong. He turned to look at Kwame. The man's face was no longer friendly, but suspiciously distant. "Why don't you sit down and relax?" Kwame suggested, pointing to an old couch. Emmanuel hesitated. Every sense in him was screaming, "Get out of here!" But he sat down, set his bag beside him, and tried to stay calm. A flood of questions exploded through his mind. Why wasn't Sophia here to greet him? Why hadn't she called to explain the change in plans? Why hadn't there been any sign that she was here? The wait stretched into what felt like hours. Emmanuel pulled out his phone and called Sophia. No one answered. Instead, the cold voice of his voicemail rang. He looked at Kwame. "Where is she?" Kwame just smiled vaguely, offering a meaningless reassurance. There was no answer. The front door creaked open just as Emmanuel was about to open his mouth to demand an explanation. 2 strange men entered. They were tall, broad-shouldered, their faces hard. Their eyes swept over Emmanuel like predators sizing up their prey. A chill ran down his spine. "Who are they?" Emmanuel asked, his voice trembling. The Kwame looked away, then answered, "Our friends." This time, the smile on his lips was no longer friendly, and Emmanuel suddenly knew. He had made a terrible mistake. The 2 men didn't say a word. They locked the door behind them, then pulled up chairs across from Emmanuel. The air in the room was heavy, so stifling that it made it difficult for him to breathe. Panic began to creep into Emmanuel's mind. His instincts screamed for him to run, but his feet felt nailed to the floor. What had once been a thrilling adventure to see Sophia was now dark. He had fallen into a trap. As the tension in the room rose, Emmanuel's mind raced with questions. Where was Sophia? Why hadn't she come out to greet him? And most importantly, how could he get out of here? Little did he know that the nightmare was only beginning. The room was dark and the smell of mold hung in the air. Kwame sat in the corner, fiddling with his phone, no longer friendly in his eyes. He no longer cared about Emmanuel. "Sophia will be here, right?" Emmanuel asked, his voice trembling, his eyes darting around the room. The 2 strangers exchanged meaningful glances, but neither answered. One of them, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, leaned forward, his cold, razor-edged eyes glancing at Emmanuel. "Relax, buddy," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're our guest tonight. No need to worry." Those words did nothing to reassure Emmanuel. He forced a smile, hiding the fear that gripped his chest. His hand furtively reached for his phone, pretending to check the time, but before he could do anything, a large hand grabbed his wrist, yanking the phone from his grasp. "No phone," the scarred man said curtly, stuffing it into his pocket. "We don't want any distractions tonight." Emmanuel's heart pounded. The phone, his only lifeline to the outside world, had just been cut off. He opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it. Trying to resist would only make things worse. These people were in control. He tried to keep his composure. "Where's Sophia?" Emmanuel asked again, his voice calmer this time, but his eyes still searching. "She'll be here soon," Kwame said, not looking up from the phone. Time passed slowly, stretching out like an eternity. The silence in the room was broken only by the small, meaningful chuckles of the two men. With each passing second, Emmanuel became more aware of his isolation. He was thousands of miles from home. No one knew he was here. No one could save him. Then the front door opened. Two more men entered. They said nothing, but their eyes were unfriendly. Their eyes scanned Emmanuel like predators sizing up prey. "This is him?" one of the newcomers asked, his voice low and emotionless. "Yeah, that's him," Kwame replied, finally putting down the phone. The newcomer opened a small cloth bag and zipped it down. Emmanuel felt his blood freeze as he saw what was inside: rope, duct tape, and a long, shiny knife. Panic welled up in Emmanuel's chest. His breathing became rapid. "What the hell is going on here?" he stammered, his voice cracking under his fear. No one answered. The two scarred men and their accomplices rose to their feet, advancing on him, their eyes murderous. Emmanuel sprang to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. "This isn't what I signed up for," he shouted, backing away, eyes scanning the room for an escape. "I came to see Sophia." The scarred man laughed contemptuously. "Sophia?" He curled his lips. "There is no Sophia." The words hit Emmanuel like a punch to the chest. The days of sincere conversation, promises, and dreamy plans had all been a lie. He had been lured into a trap. He tried to run, but they pounced on him. Two rough hands pinned him to the couch. Emmanuel struggled wildly, but they were too strong. The scarred man grabbed the rope, tying his hands behind his back, while the other covered his mouth with a thick strip of duct tape. Emmanuel tried to scream, but only desperate grunts echoed in the room where no one else could hear. He was truly trapped, and now only darkness and fear swallowed him. "Relax," the Kwame said, his voice eerily calm. "This will be over soon." Emmanuel's muffled cries echoed in the darkened room as the men rummaged through his luggage, dragging out his phone, wallet, and the gifts he had carefully selected for Sophia. They sneered, pocketed the money, and discarded the rest like trash. Emmanuel could do nothing but sit there, his hands numb from the tight bindings, his wrists aching from the rope digging into his flesh. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the seismic event inside his mind. He recalled every stupid decision that had brought him here. Every warning was ignored. Every sign of trouble was brushed aside. Outside, the city of Accra bustled, unconcerned with the nightmare unfolding within its gloomy walls. As for Emmanuel, he was left alone, facing the horrifying truth. The people he trusted had turned his dream of love into a living hell. But the night was not over yet, and the absolute horror still awaited him. Time dragged on like a never-ending nightmare. Emmanuel's body was limp from the restraints, his mind filled with fear and despair. In the corner of the room, his captors whispered something, occasionally laughing, as if his pain was nothing more than a cheap pastime. Then the door opened again. Another person entered. Emmanuel raised his head, his heart leaping with hope. Sophia? Was this a terrible misunderstanding? For a fleeting moment he thought that everything could be explained, that Sophia existed, that she would come in and rescue him from this nightmare. But then, his hopes quickly evaporated. The woman who entered was beautiful. She wore a tight red dress, her face perfect under meticulous makeup. But something was wrong. The cold confidence she exuded didn't fit the dark setting. Then her eyes swept the room, cold, calculating, emotionless. At that moment, Emmanuel understood. "So, this is him?" the woman said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Yes," Kwame replied, leaning against the wall with a look of terrifying ease. She advanced on Emmanuel, her high heels clicking against the floor, a fateful count. Emmanuel tensed, every muscle in his body turning to stone. She leaned down, her face inches from his. Then her lips curved into a smile that froze his blood. "Emmanuel Adat Tunbo," she whispered, sweet but mocking. "You came here to see me, didn't you?" Emmanuel couldn't answer. His heart broke. This was Sophia, or at least this was the one pretending to be her. She sneered, stood up, and turned to her companions. "How many stupid men like him have fallen for this trick?" The room shook with mocking laughter, and Emmanuel finally understood. He had been tricked. He had been hunted. And now he was nothing more than prey in their hands. The room filled with cruel laughter, drowning Emmanuel in utter humiliation. "Every time they run at it like moths to a flame," Sophia sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. "Like him, thinking he's found true love." The laughter erupted like sharp knives piercing Emmanuel's pride. His despair flared into anger. Emmanuel clenched his fists, fighting against the rope around his wrists, feeling the sting of the rope cutting into his flesh. He screamed, but the thick tape muffled the sound. The scarred man looked at him for a second, then threw a powerful punch to the stomach. Emmanuel gasped in pain, his entire body hunched over as the intense pain spread through his body. "Enough!" Sophia ordered, her voice suddenly cold and efficient. She turned to Kwame. "Have you got it all?" Kwame held up Emmanuel's wallet and phone, shaking them gently. "We got his cash and his bank cards, but—" He shrugged. "We still need the PIN." Sophia turned a sweet, deadly smile on her face. "Emmanuel, I need your cooperation," she said, her voice as gentle as coaxing a child. "If you tell us the PIN, this will all be over quickly." Emmanuel shook his head. Anger and fear made him grit his teeth, his eyes blazing with defiance. He knew they would have no reason to keep him alive if they got the PIN. She frowned, then gestured to the scarred man. He grabbed Emmanuel by the collar, yanking him to his feet. The next few minutes were a jumble of violence and threats. Over and over again, they punched, kicked, slammed Emmanuel to the floor, but he didn't speak. Sophia stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching as if this were a typical business transaction. Emmanuel remained silent, though his body ached. He knew that someone would probably notice he was missing if he waited. But they had been prepared for this. Sophia stepped forward, Emmanuel's phone in her hand. "Do you have a family?" she asked, her voice eerily calm as she scrolled through his contacts. Her eyes scanned the names. "Your brother? Your mother? Your colleagues back home?" She smiled faintly. "How do you think they would feel if they received a picture of you, looking like this?" She held up the phone. The flash went off. For a brief moment the dark room lit up, capturing the image of a bruised, bound Emmanuel, eyes wide with fear. "We'll send them this photo," Sophia continued, her voice cold. "And if they don't pay—" She tilted her head, smiling wickedly. "They'll never see you again." Emmanuel's heart sank. The nightmare had turned into something much more terrifying. This wasn't just a robbery. It was a carefully planned blackmail plot. They huddled together, discussing their next move. Emmanuel sat motionless, his body broken, but his spirit still unbroken. And that's when he saw something important. A small window in the corner of the room, open. His heart pounded. It was a chance. A slim chance, but a chance nonetheless. He began to shift his weight inch by inch, testing the tightness of the ropes that bound his hands. If he could loosen them just a little. But time was running out, and if he waited too long, the opportunity might be gone forever. As the sun rose over Accra, the city awoke, returning to its routine. No one knew about the nightmare unfolding in a dilapidated house on the outskirts. No one noticed that Emmanuel Adat Tunbo was missing. At least, not yet. In Lagos, Emmanuel's absence was no longer regular. He had promised to call his younger brother, Tunde, as soon as he reached Ghana. It was a family habit, a ritual they always followed. But hours had passed, and Emmanuel's phone remained silent. Tunde's unease turned to panic. He called again and again, but no one answered. Each unanswered ring only added to his fear. By the end of the day, Tunde decided to act. He sent a message to the family chat group asking if anyone had heard from Emmanuel. No one answered. "Maybe he's busy," someone suggested. "He'll call back soon." But Tunde knew Emmanuel too well. His brother was always careful and always on time. He would never miss a call with the family. Something was wrong. Looking for clues, Tunde went to Emmanuel's social media accounts. His last update had been from the day before, a photo from the airport with the caption, "Next stop, Ghana, so excited to finally see her." Tunde froze. Her? He had no idea who Emmanuel was talking about. But now, more than ever, he knew he had to find out, before it was too late. Tunde sat motionless, eyes glued to the phone screen as the message was sent. "Please tell me you're not alone." His heart clenched as he stared at the words on the screen. He had always been skeptical of Emmanuel's online romance. From the beginning, he had voiced his concerns, warning his brother about the dangers of trusting strangers online. But Emmanuel had not listened. As hours passed without a response, Tunde's unease quickly turned to genuine fear. Tunde paced repeatedly, muttering to himself, trying to find answers. On Monday morning, he contacted the Nigerian embassy in Ghana, reporting Emmanuel's disappearance. The staff took the information, promising to report it to local authorities. But waiting was not an option. Tunde decided to take matters into his own hands. Tunde pieces clues about his brother's travels through Emmanuel's social media posts. Sophia's profile contains an address, information Emmanuel had proudly shared before leaving. With that one clue, Tunde books a flight to Ghana. He must find Emmanuel before it's too late. In Accra, Ghanaian police received a tip and began investigating. The address linked to Sophia leads them to a quiet neighborhood. But not everyone is convinced it's truly peaceful. "There's something very wrong with that place," says one resident. "Stranger people come and go at all hours of the night. We keep our distance." Immediately, the police are on high alert. A search warrant is issued. When they enter the house, weapons at the ready, the scene inside is grim. Furniture in disarray, traces of violence everywhere, blood on the floor. They found a torn shirt in one corner of the room, Emmanuel's, along with other personal items. But no sign of Emmanuel. Police quickly identified the house as the center of a criminal organization specializing in fraud and violent robbery. Sophia and Kwame and the entire group were gone. They left behind incriminating evidence, fake identification, stolen goods, disposable phones, their primary tool for defrauding their victims. The messages on Sophia's phone painted a chilling picture. Emmanuel was not their first victim. They had planned it meticulously, targeting gullible men from other countries, luring them into their traps with promises of love. Emmanuel's mysterious disappearance made headlines in the Ghanaian media. Police issued a public alert, warning people about the dangers of online scams. Photos of Sophia, Kwame, and their gang were posted everywhere with official arrest warrants. The first leads began to appear. Several people reported seeing the group in a remote area. Tunde did not stop. He worked tirelessly alongside the police, refusing to give up hope. He knew Emmanuel was still alive, but time waited for no one. After weeks of investigation, the police tracked down the gang, a remote hideout. A raid was ordered. As the sun set, Ghanaian police surrounded the compound. The door was burst open. In the chaos, Sophia, Kwame, and their gang were arrested on the spot. In a back room, they found Emmanuel, beaten but still alive. He collapsed, his body bruised, but his spirit unbroken. When the door opened and Emmanuel saw Tunde standing there, tears streamed down both their faces. "I told you so," Tunde whispered, his voice breaking with tears. With overwhelming evidence, the gang was quickly prosecuted. Emmanuel's testimony was key in bringing Sophia, Kwame, and their associates to justice. They were sentenced to years in prison, ending their ruthless scam. Upon returning to Nigeria, Emmanuel faced post-traumatic stress. The physical scars may heal, but the mental scars don't. But he didn't let the pain overwhelm him. Emmanuel decided to speak out. He told his story, warning others about the dangers of online scams. He turned his pain into a purpose. For Tunde and his family, having Emmanuel back was a miracle. The horrific ordeal brought them closer together. But above all, it was a lesson in love, loyalty, and perseverance. And even in the face of unimaginable betrayal, love and hope always prevail.